Shalom Aleichem. This is Rabbi Arthur Wasko, Director of the Shalom Center. Our website is the Shalom Center.org, and welcome you to our weekly discussion of the Torah portion of the week. This week it's about Vayeitzei, and most of the portion includes competition, the conflict between Rachel and Leah about having children. They were Jacob's two wives. And the question about which could have more children was a deep problem between them. There's a point at which Rachel, who was way behind in having children, said to Jacob, "Here is my slave girl, Bilhah. Come into her so that she may give birth upon my knees, so that I too may be built up with sons through her." And through Bilhah, she had two sons. The first, she said, was a proof of justice vis-a-vis her co-wife, Leah, and she named the boy Dan, justice. So that might be a hint that justice must be born from the passion of slaves, as happened later in Egypt, from the passion of an enslaved people bringing freedom. Maybe it will happen in our own society now only through the passion of a people that was long enslaved and still subjugated. And of the second son, she said, "A struggle of God have I struggled with my sister. Yes, I have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali, my struggle. Now that line is kind of a pre-echo of a story that we'll read from the Torah next week. It's far more famous. It's the story in which Jacob, in the midst of a struggle with his brother Esau, wrestles with God's own self. And he prevails, according to the translations, and finds his own name changed to Yisrael, God wrestler. And the presence of that pre-echo isn't an accident. What is it that Torah is trying to tell us? First of all, it's trying to teach us that two women can also have a God struggle, not only two men. And the verse is a kind of a banner, waving, saying, pay attention. Secondly, it's telling us that the struggle over having children, the future is a God struggle, even though most Torah commentators seem to have ignored the implications. Indeed, the struggle between Leah's children and Rachel's children turn out to be momentous for the future. It's cast in the future stories of the Torah as the struggle between Joseph, who was a true child of Rachel, and his half brothers, the older ones who sell him into slavery in Egypt. And for our own generation, what could be more a God struggle than the future of our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren as earth reels in pain, croaking, I can't breathe. As we know now, we're pouring so much CO2 into the planet that all its trees and grasses can't breathe it in, the CO2, and transmute it into oxygen. So it suffocates and scorches us. Our earth can't breathe. God's name can't breathe. our grandchildren won't be able to breathe. As the very last words of the classical prophets said, I, yeah, the interbreath of life, will send you Elijah the prophet to turn the hearts of the parents to the children and the hearts of the children to the parents, lest I come not as the breath of life, not even as wind of, but as the hurricane of disaster to smite earth with utter destruction. That's in the last words of the prophet Malachi. I feel like ending this with a prayer. But you who are still the breath of life, who breathe life into us, give us the love to struggle with you in a God struggle, just as Rachel did for the sake of our children. Shalom. May we be able to carry on that struggle for the future.